By mid-2026, visitors to the West Wing began reporting a persistent, sulfurous odor clinging to the hallways of the executive branch. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Vice President J.D. Vance have completely overhauled their daily menus. The two men have adopted this new lifestyle so strictly that Kennedy's wife, actress Cheryl Hines, reports he tries to hand her plastic bags of wet, fermented cabbage to carry in her designer clutch when they go out to formal events. The actual daily regimen is extremely rigid. It requires massive, heaping portions of fermented cabbage, like sauerkraut and kimchi. These are paired with grass-fed steak, eggs, and pickles, while entirely eliminating sugar and alcohol. The architect behind this specific pairing is Dr. Sean O'Mara, an emergency medicine physician who now specializes in human health and performance optimization. O'Mara focuses heavily on reducing visceral fat, the dangerous fat that wraps around your internal organs. And his personalized optimization plans come with a price tag of up to $18,000. The high price hasn't deterred the cabinet. Kennedy claims he dropped 20 pounds in 30 days and eliminated his aches and pains. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy jumped on board after noticing Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy's glowing skin. Spending $18,000 to smell like sour cabbage makes for an easy political punchline. But the clinical data reveals a sharp divide. The fermented half of the plate shows promise for cognitive function, while the heavy meat side presents a documented risk for arterial disease. Inside your gut is a microscopic ecosystem of active bacteria. This microbiome is exactly what the cabbage targets. This chart plots the findings from a 2021 Stanford clinical trial, showing the relationship between fermented food intake and inflammation. Notice the steep downward trend. As healthy adults ate more fermented foods, up to 6 servings a day, 19 different inflammatory proteins dropped. That includes interleukin-6, a marker directly linked to chronic stress and rheumatoid arthritis. A 2025 UC Davis study backed this up, finding that the specific metabolites reduced during cabbage fermentation physically protect intestinal cells from damage. But those protective effects do not stay in the stomach. The human intestinal tract houses the enteric nervous system. This is essentially a secondary brain built out of roughly 100 million neurons, functioning in constant bidirectional communication with your actual brain. Because of that direct neural link, researchers are now studying fermented foods as psychobiotics, interventions that alter your mood through your microbiome. A clinical trial led by researcher Ghazaleh Akashe showed that targeted probiotic strains significantly decrease symptoms in patients with major depressive disorder. Another large survey of young adults found that routinely eating fermented foods strongly predicted much lower levels of social anxiety. For officials running the federal government, cortisol and anxiety are daily occupational hazards. The science of the gut-brain axis validates their claims of intense focus and stress reduction. The problem starts when looking at the rest of the plate. This diet requires massive amounts of heavy, high-fat meat while virtually eliminating dietary fiber. Major institutions like the Cleveland Clinic and the British Heart Foundation explicitly warn against regimens structured like this. The sheer volume of saturated fat required to sustain a near-carnivore diet places immense strain on the kidneys and forces the liver into overdrive. This graph illustrates a medical case report published in the journal Atherosclerosis. It tracks the lipid levels of 2 healthy young men who followed a strict heavy-meat carnivore diet for 1 year. Their LDL, the bad cholesterol, rocketed past 600 milligrams per deciliter. To put that in perspective, a normal healthy reading is generally under 100. When LDL cholesterol stays that high, it leads directly to a condition called intima media thickening. That is the physical thickening of the innermost layers of your artery walls, which doctors recognize as the early development of arterial blockages. The dietary protocol creates a biological collision. The sauerkraut delivers anti-inflammatory compounds that improve short-term well-being, effectively masking the long-term silent cardiovascular and kidney damage caused by eating plates of steak every morning. 2,000 years ago, laborers building the Great Wall of China fermented cabbage in rice wine to survive. Today, political elites are spending up to $18,000 for optimization protocols to tell them to eat the exact same thing. When you strip away the branding, the core value of this diet is incredibly cheap. Paying a massive premium for a doctor to walk you through a grocery store and label ancient food preservation as modern biohacking is a luxury tax, not a medical necessity. The administration's Make America Healthy Again agenda identified a nutritional truth supported by clinical trials. Ultra-processed foods are harmful, and live culture foods can help restore the microbiome. But that science has been bundled into a high-risk, saturated fat lifestyle brand. You can get the exact same cognitive and anti-inflammatory benefits at your local supermarket for a few dollars. Just buy a jar of raw, unpasteurized sauerkraut from the refrigerated section. Start with half a cup a day to let your stomach adjust. Keep an eye on the sodium content and check your lipid levels with your doctor. The Cabinet's adoption of this protocol signals how deeply the concept of the gut-brain axis has entered the mainstream. You can choose to prioritize the documented benefits of fermented foods while avoiding the cardiac risks favored by the politicians.